For me, at that time, my doctor told me, if you don't change your environment, you're going to die. It was that simple, it was that clear, it was that direct. Well, it was because I was in a toxic environment. And sometimes what happens is we don't recognize the impact of poor leadership. I got a text message about a month and a half ago from somebody who said, Paula, I'm concerned about you. Have you thought about grief counseling? You have gone through an extensive amount of loss. And I'm going to be very honest, I had not. What happens sometimes as leaders, we don't understand our own challenges and we still try to show up. We don't understand those who we lead. They may be going through something.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Lisa L. Campbell here with the Growth Motivator Live. Today's episode is going to focus on leadership development, communication as a leader. And today I am honored to have with me Mrs. Paula Jenkins.
Hello, and thank you very much, Dr. Lisa. I am very pleased to be here today.
Awesome. So one of the reasons that I wanted this topic to be in season number 1 is I'm a healthcare leader, but prior to being a healthcare leader, I was being led by other leaders. And one of the themes that I saw very early on was that leaders are promoted, not supported. Leaders are promoted, but they're not prepared. And so I personally started as a leader when I was 16 years old. I was a cashier at McDonald's, so I started at the bottom. And 3 months into my role as a cashier, I self-taught myself how to do other functions at McDonald's. Now, I know you're thinking, McDonald's, hey, don't judge. McDonald's was a great start for me because it really helped me to understand how to communicate with others. So now 3 months into my McDonald's position, I was promoted to a crew chief. And the role of the crew chief was to train others. And so I really enjoyed training others because I really just was like amazed by their growth. I believe when you give others a platform to grow and they're willing to grow, they will grow. It's just like putting some fertilizer into the grass. Now, I don't have a green thumb, but putting fertilizer into the grass, and then the next season, your grass is starting to grow. And so one of the things that I think is important, especially with leaders, that we promote them, we prepare them, and we support them. And so, Paula, tell our audience a little bit about your background. I know you are big in the leadership space, communication space. Tell our listening and viewing audience about your background.
Yeah, so I came from a corporate career, and I was in corporate America for nearly 20 years. And during that time, I was leading teams and people and clients. And during that time, there's a lot that I saw, and some good, some bad when it came to leadership. And one of the things that occurred during the course of my years in corporate America is focusing on making sure people were ready to be managers. And so we had a manager prepare workshop, and you can quickly tell when people are ready or need to be really trained before they are promoted or given direct reports. And over the years, Lisa, one of the things that was really important to me was understanding how to make sure those who move into any kind of leadership role were ready. Well, needless to say, about 5 years ago, I left corporate America. And I left because I unfortunately was in a toxic work environment due to a bad leader. And one of the things that I talk about when I do speak is about 180 over 140. Those are two numbers that are really important to me. Now, for most people, when I say that, they quickly think of what? Blood pressure. That was my blood pressure. And for me, At that time, my doctor told me, if you don't change your environment, you're going to die. It was that simple. It was that clear. It was that direct. Well, it was because I was in a toxic environment. And sometimes what happens is we don't recognize the impact of poor leadership. I am literally on a charge right now to change the world by helping us understand how one conversation at a time can change how we communicate. Everything begins and ends with communication, whether it's your tone, whether it's your body language, or whether it is what you say, and even our written communications as well.
Oh my gosh, you just dumped a lot on us today. And so I think it's important that we unpack this because you need to help some people because there are a lot of leaders who are causing other folks' blood pressure to go up. And I said this to one of my other guests. We are allowing ourselves to be held hostage by salary and benefits. And those salary and benefits are going to take us out.
Yes.
And so, some of the things that you said really resonated with me because, so I started at McDonald's as a manager, right? A crew chief, then a shift manager, swing manager, went to Hamburger University, all of this before 18. I've been a leader since I was 5 years old. And a lot of people say to me, well, you're functioning in leadership roles because of your degrees. No, the degrees I earned were to complement my God-given talents. But I think about how, as a manager at McDonald's, yes, I learned very early on how to manage people and processes. And when I say manage people, I'm not talking about being a dictator with them. I'm talking about embracing the diversity of their backgrounds. I worked at McDonald's in Blue Island, Illinois. It was a very diverse background, a diverse area. And there, I gave everyone else the platform to grow, and they grew. So if they were hired to work in the kitchen, when it was slow, I showed them how to work up front. We all were responsible for making sure that the environment was clean. So when our customers visited McDonald's, yes, McDonald's, and I think some of the old school values from McDonald's are gone today. But when our guests came in to McDonald's, they got a dining experience. Yes, at McDonald's. Now, fast forward to me entering healthcare in 1992. I started off as a medical assistant. I wasn't a leader. And I asked someone one day, how do I become a leader in this space? And they said, well, you need to go to school. Now I'm looking at some of the leaders that were in charge of me. They hadn't been to school. But I said, okay, if that's what it takes, that's what I'm going to do. One of the things about me, and you'll hear me say this quite frequently, you may tell me no, but I'm not going to accept that. Because for me, no just means not right now, not yet. And so I got the degree, right? Got my bachelor's degree in healthcare management. I was 5 years into my healthcare career, applied for a position at the hospital that I was working at. We're not going to say the name, just in Illinois. And they gave the job to someone else who had a high school diploma, didn't have the communication skills that I had, because at McDonald's, I could get anybody to come in on a shift when they wasn't scheduled with me because they knew that we were going to function as a team and that I was not there to be a dictator. I partnered with them during our shift because that's what made us run smooth. And so I didn't get that job. And so I said, oh, all right, organization, I'm leaving because you're not going to stop my growth. That's the whole reason why my new book, Grow With Me, is titled Grow With Me, because I've had lots of life obstacles and challenges. And every time somebody told me no, I said, oh, okay. And I never said anything to them. I just internally made it my mission to get what I wanted, not only what I wanted, but what I deserved. And as I continue to climb in healthcare, I had lots of leaders who had me in toxic situations. And when your blood pressure is consistently high, when your face looks like you about to just take your life, because you can see it in your own face, your family can see it in your face, it's time to go. And sometimes I think fear creeps in and prevents us from taking that one step. So we stay stuck and we stay unhappy. And I believe that's why mental health continues to rise, because there are leaders that are forcing people to have mental breakdowns. I don't care about an EAP, because you can go and get the 3 to 5 EAP visits, but if that leader is still toxic, it doesn't matter. So, Miss Paula, tell us about what it is you really do and who you serve. I want our audience to know that you are the expert in this space, because not only have you trained thousands of leaders, but you've been on the other side of the table where you were the person that was being led and damaged all at the same time.
Yeah, it's a really great question. So for me, it's a combination. So number one is starting with individuals. So whether that is executive coaching, one-on-one coaching, somebody who's trying to recognize that I want to become a leader, I want to be a manager, I want to be a people manager, I can work with them. I can help them develop those skills. But for me, more importantly, it's also the organizations. So it's the organizations out here who recognize that they believe in their talent, believe in their talent, but they don't invest in them. They don't have the right leadership programs in place. They don't put their new managers or current managers in leadership development programs. And so I focus on that. I focus on what I call all the things when it comes to leadership development. And that is, to your point, is coming from a place of not only have I've been on the receiving end of extremely poor management, but I've also led quite a few organizations, whether that's nonprofits, whether that is from a volunteer perspective, whether that's in corporate, it's teams. That's who I am. And so I don't do this work because I just want to come out here and just say, oh, I'm a leadership expert. No, I've worked this, I've done this, I am this. And so part of it is recognizing that there's tools that we all can use that sometimes people just don't know. And sometimes when you don't know what to do. You know, it's that whole, we hear it all the time. I don't know what I don't know. So you may think you can be this great leader, but if you don't understand the impact and the importance of emotional intelligence, we're going to have a problem. I was asked about a year ago, what's the most important skill a leader needs? And immediately I said empathy. And the person said, whoa, I didn't think of that. And then he said, but you're right. And so there's some basics that I think when it comes to leadership that I try my best to help organizations in coming in and helping them, either with it is a staff retreat, whether it is again a leadership cohort of new managers, where there's current managers who are losing people, so they have a retention problem. So it's really trying to come in and say, what do we need to uncover? When I was in corporate America, part of what I did, and I can look back now and reflect on it and recognize, okay, that's what I did, but I was a turnaround queen. I was always picked and chosen to go fix this team, go fix this client, go turn this team around. And it's because I knew how to ask the right questions and identify what was happening. So for me, who do I help? It's individuals, yes, but it's really the organizations who really right now need to invest in their talent.
I love it. So I recently read this book, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. And there was a leader who was really kind of toxic. I'm gonna give you the short version. Really kind of toxic, and he was sent through this training where he learned how to be in learner mode as opposed to judger mode. I think oftentimes the knee-jerk response is to judge and not to learn. And, our coach says to us we should be learning faster than we're growing. And so when I read that book, I said, whoa, ego is the enemy. So I read another book, Ego is the Enemy. And so I realized that a lot of leaders get into the position of leadership and They may have gone to the school, the big fancy schools and have all of the degrees. But to me, if I put that degree to the side and have you function in your true zone of genius as the leader, you should be able to lead, empower, and transform lives, not destroy them. So, give us an example of a situation where there was a team that was destroyed, and you, and I love this, I didn't know this about you. We need to tell more folks about this. The turnaround queen. How did you turn that department or organization around?
Yeah, so an example that I have is there was a team of individuals, and we always say we'll not use names or any identifying factors, but really it was centered around people not understanding their role, people not valuing what other people did on the team, and the lack of expectations. And so when you start unpacking, you come in, and what I did is I came in and I asked questions and understanding what the prior leadership had done or whatever, me being the new person, but asking simple questions. And a lot of times what happens is that we always start at the top. No, you got to ask everybody. You ask everybody on the team what's going on, what's going well, what can be better. When you start asking those questions, you start again unpacking what is happening. What I recognize is prior leadership was not meeting people where they were. So, what does that mean? Well, when you start talking to people and start saying, here's my situation, or here's what's going on, or I couldn't do this because I wasn't trained on this, but nobody asked the question. There was an assumption made that everybody knew what they were supposed to be doing. When I would ask questions about, well, do you understand what your role is? They would say yes, and they would tell me. And then I would say, actually, that's not your role. So again, to me, that's a lack of what? Communication. That's a lack of understanding. And more importantly, that means we didn't take the time to get to know our team at all. Anytime somebody is brought in to help turn around or lead, you have to make sure that not only do you understand everybody's role, but that your team understands. And I say a lot of times that everybody has a story. Everybody. Now, do they owe you their story? They do not. If you get to know them, they will tell you their story. So part of what I did with this team was got to know each and every single person, understood who they were, understood what they needed, and then helping them all understand we're here to serve our client. And by doing that and really creating what I call a culture of trust, a culture of fun, because you got to have some fun, but also a culture of wanting to make sure that we do great work. That allowed us in about a 3 to 6 month time frame to turn around that team. And the client even made comments about how wonderful the service was. So part of it, again, is coming in, asking the questions, but it's also creating a culture of trust as well.
That was powerful. That was powerful. I right before the pandemic went through a training on situational leadership. And one of the things that I loved about situational leadership was that you needed to diagnose each individual members of the team. So when I'm asked to do leadership training for a team, one of the things I like to do is to create an avatar for each person that I'm training before I even see them. Now, you and I as entrepreneurs, we call that the customer persona, right? But I like to create an avatar for each person on the team before I get there by asking them some probing questions to help me build their avatar. And in this day and age, I can get their face and put it on my avatar diagram. But then when I go in to meet with each and every person, I add or subtract from my avatar because I get to know them personally. But what I also do simultaneously is I'm vulnerable enough to tell them about me. One of the things I found is that leaders oftentimes put themselves up here and put their staff down there. And in healthcare, because I'm a healthcare professional, when I say to the patient, the person who's registering patients, I'll say to them, you know what? When I was registering patients, we used to do X, Y, and Z. And how do you do that there? I built this rapport with that team member Because what I want to do is, number one, peel back this layer, peel back this perception that I have this PhD, right? And I'm all that. I'm a girl from the south side of Chicago who is struggling to navigate life just like everybody else. And being vulnerable in that space with those professionals, because they're all professionals. Just because you register the patient at the front desk of a hospital or a clinic does not make you less valued than the person who's in the C-suite. And I think a lot of times we allow titles to hold us hostage, because when they strip away your title, you still should be a whole person all by yourself.
You're gonna have me shouting up in here.
Well, you know what? I've seen it. And because I have had the privilege of working at the facility as an employee, but then as a consultant working as the external pair of eyes, the external party, I know from both sides. And when I come in, the good thing about me coming in, I'm not coming in with the baggage that they all have. So when I come in and do strategic planning sessions and we want to look at what goals the department wants to do, how they align with the organization, it's all of the skills, no experience left behind, right? All of the skills that I've learned that allows me to effectively diagnose each and every team member and collectively come up with a plan for success, a plan for growth. That's why they call me the growth motivator, because I believe in helping individuals and organizations shed that weight that is holding them hostage. We are in this great, resignation era. And if leaders don't get it together, they're not going to have a team.
And one of the things that I think is so important about that is when we're talking about even our growth, part of growth is also understanding that it never ends. It never ends. And so part of this is being vulnerable. Part of this is being authentic. So I'm writing a book myself right now, and it is about living and leading authentically. And that's so important, because when we do that and we create these cultures as leaders to ensure that we show up and be able to show who we are, that we've been there, that I in the role that I have, it doesn't make me more important than you. We all can be leaders from any seat that we sit in. We do not have to have the title, but also being authentic about your experiences, authentic about who you are, it makes a difference. And too often what happens is we have people who are in positions, manager, leader, whatever you want to call them, and too often people will say, well, they're not genuine. They're not genuine. Being genuine, being authentic, it shows up. And so part of this is also recognizing as we grow and as we lead, we have to make sure that we make space for those who are looking at us, following us, working with us, any of those things. It becomes critical that we make sure that we live in our authenticity, but also recognize that does not give you carte blanche to be mean and evil and a horrible leader. What it tells us is, I am who I am. And I say it all the time. I am unapologetically Paula, but that does not make me perfect. I still can grow and I still can learn. And our leaders have to understand that as well.
Oh my God. You are such a powerful, powerful woman. I love it. I love it. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. And before we leave for today, before I ask you more questions, tell our listening, viewing audience how they can get in touch with you, because I know there are, just in Illinois alone, there are organizations that need you. And I think sometimes some leaders are afraid to say that they need help. That ego won't let them acknowledge that my team is falling apart right before my eyes, but I'm just going to come in here and be strong, aka bully everybody. So, but they need help and they're afraid to admit that they need help. And getting help is not a sign of weakness. Honestly, to me, it takes strength to be able to say, that I need help. I realize that I'm struggling. I realize that the dynamics of my team has shifted, especially when you have a leader that takes over a department. They come in and try to run this department like they ran that department at that organization, not realizing that the culture of that organization is different, the culture of that team is different, and they feel like I'm the boss, so you must respect me, and that is point blank, period.
Yeah. So two things. So one, to contact me, the best place I always say is LFS Consulting. LLC is my company. I can be found on Instagram at LFS Consulting, also on Facebook as well. The best place is LinkedIn. So Paula Jenkins, MBA. Yes, I have an MBA in Leadership and Change Management. Plug there. That is the absolute best way. Or if you want to just email me, you can actually email me as well at paula@lfsconsult.com. But I also want to just piggyback on what you just said in terms of really recognizing that piece is it's just so important. And I think again we fail to realize how important all of this is when it comes to being a leader, and again showing up in the best way. And I know sometimes it is hard to raise our hand. I know that. I know it is. But the reality is help is here. I tell my clients all the time, I am here to help. I am not here to judge. That's not what I do. I'm here to help. And when we raise our hand, to me, that is the best form of leadership. It is, because it's recognizing I don't know everything. I don't know everything. And I need help. When you do that, that to me, that is a great sign of leadership.
Love it, love it. So I got a couple more questions for you before we end today, because I want our audience to just learn a little bit more about you. They already see you're powerful. They already see that. But tell us about a time when you faced a significant challenge in your personal or professional life and how you overcame it.
So that's a really great question. So, there's all kinds of things that happen in life. I talked about the 180 over 140 blood pressure, but I'm going to actually talk about more recent. So, in the last probably 2 to 3 years, I have had numerous loss, numerous loss. Just recently, I realized I have probably had 10 significant deaths in the last 2.5 years. That is a lot. And what happens sometimes as leaders, what do? We continue to keep moving. We continue to keep doing whatever we do. We continue to show up. And the reality is, I got a text message about a month and a half ago from somebody who said, Paula, I'm concerned about you. Have you thought about grief counseling? You have gone through an extensive amount of loss. And I'm going to be very honest. I had not. I had not. And after that message, I realized how important it is to make sure that we take care of ourselves, and did and am now in grief counseling. And the reason why I want to bring that in particular is what happens sometimes as leaders, we don't understand our own challenges and we still try to show up. We don't understand those who we lead. They may be going through something. And so for me, my challenge right now is to make sure that I continuously show up for myself and make sure that I take care of myself unapologetically. And I have been saying this forever, and I'm going to keep saying it. No is a complete sentence. And so my lesson has been to make sure that I don't continue to say yes to everything, and recognize that it's okay to say no. And I don't owe everybody an explanation when I say it.
Wow, 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 wow. Well, as you know, I am one of your many accountability partners, because I will call you out in a minute and say, Paula, where you at? Where you at?
Yes.
But I think that speaks to the community that we've built as entrepreneurs in supporting each other and helping each other grow, is that you have to recognize you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say that I was the lonely entrepreneur, actually before I met you guys, and I didn't know what I was missing. I knew I was missing something. Everybody that I talk to on a daily basis is a 9 to 5 person. I'm not a 9 to 5 person. I like to be free to move about the country. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong, with being a 9 to 5 person, but that's just not who I am. And so as I take risk in this entrepreneurial journey, financial risk, physical risk, emotional risk, I felt alone. And once I got with a community, once I got coaching, was exposed to coaching, I'm the person who was always motivating, mentoring, and growing everybody else, but I didn't have anybody that did that for me. There's this pastor, Joel Osteen, who said, if you're the smartest person in your bunch, you need to get a new crew. And he is so right, because that's how I felt. And I'm not talking about degrees. And I'm very intentional about saying this, because people often say to me, you got that PhD degree, you think you all that. You know why I have this PhD? And I want to make sure everybody is very clear about the why. I was teaching at a school in 2004. I was a full-time, on the tenure track professor. I went to Human Resources and said, hey, Human Resources, I need to know how to make some more money, because I got this master's degree. And if I was in healthcare administration as a VP or director, I would be making more money. And so they said, you need a second master's degree, or you need to get a PhD. So I said, well, it doesn't make sense to have 2 master's degrees, so I'm going to get the PhD. But that PhD nearly took me out, but it also helped me recognize how strong I am, because I made it through the end, whereas many people don't. But those degrees don't define me. They were a tool that I used to get me from point A to point B. And I'm just going to be real. I left before the tenure process even culminated, because I decided I was too young to be down that path, and I wanted to focus on healthcare primarily, healthcare leadership. But then I also continue to teach as an adjunct, because I want to bring the real world into the classroom. Because, and I know you're an adjunct as well, when they publish the textbook, it's old. And the textbook is oftentimes not representative of the real world, because leaders that we're developing, they need real world case studies that do not include all the fluff. Because a textbook never saved me in the middle of a management meeting or a management crisis. It was my gut, it was my experience that helped me do so. So we're going to wrap up here, but I want to know, how do you prioritize your time and stay productive?
How, or do I? So here's what I would say. I try very hard to use my calendar. I am a big believer in blocking time and really making sure that if I'm going to be doing something, that it's productive, and that if nothing else, it's on my calendar, and I have purposely said, this is what I'm going to focus. Now, am I always great at that? I'm not. I'm still trying. It's one of those things where I think as an entrepreneur, you really have to be intentional about. And I think that's probably the hardest part of obviously being an entrepreneur. But the reality is it can be done. And so part of what I just try to do is be real clear about what it is that I'm focusing on. And I will say that given all that I have been through in the last few years, I've gotten a lot more clear about what's important and what's not, and where my time should be spent, where it shouldn't be spent. And for me, that's critical, honestly. That to me is the piece where there's things I probably would have, again, said yes to maybe a year or two ago, but I absolutely want. So part of it is being intentional.
I love it. And I actually love that you said that it's okay to say no, because I am very active with my professional association, and oftentimes I'll get a request to do XYZ. And I too have started saying no. And I'm not saying no because I don't have the time to do it, which to some extent I don't. But I'm saying no so that I can focus on my own growth. Saying yes has allowed everybody else to grow. But saying
Come
no
on.
is
Come
for
on.
me.
Yes.
And the next 50 years of my life
Come on.
is I'm going to continue to help everybody else grow, but I am going to grow in the way that I know I am destined to grow. I have visions of me being on these large stages, impacting the world.
Mhm.
And I can't do that if I'm saying yes to everybody else. So I'm saying no to them and yes to me.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming here today and chatting with me about leadership development, communication. Everybody has Paula's information. We're going to make sure they have it one more time because, sometimes people are like, I missed it. So, one more time, where can our listening and viewing audience reach you?
Yes. So my company's name is LFS Consulting LLC. And on Instagram, I'm LFS Consulting. On Facebook, LFS Consulting. The best place, again, is LinkedIn, Paula Jenkins, MBA. Or you can just email me at Paula at LFS, that's Larry Frank Sam, consult.com.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Growth Motivator with me, Dr. Lisa L. Campbell. Until next time, stay safe and have a wonderful day.